Hello, and welcome to the Everyday Business Problems Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Crysler. Each episode, we talk to business leaders and subject matter experts to learn about the challenges they've overcome and the challenges they still face. You'll hear fresh insights, real talk, and get inspiration to grow your business. Hey everybody, and thanks for joining me on another solo episode of the Everyday Business Problems Podcast. Today we are diving into operational audits. What is an operational audit? Going to be breaking that down and sharing everything that you need to know. So kicking things off, I recently read a stat that 60% of companies out there are identifying improving operational efficiency as one of their top priorities for the new year. This was a survey that was conducted by Couchbase, and I think it's interesting because a lot of the conversations I get into with leaders kind of across sectors, across industries, is that we know we have an issue. We know we have, maybe an opportunity around productivity, around maybe deliverability or consistency. We've identified some different points of waste throughout our organization or operation. But the question inevitably comes back to, where do we start? How do we get confidence that we're actually moving the needle and moving towards the strategic goals that we're outlining? So from my perspective, an operational audit is the tool that you can utilize to do that gap analysis from current state, right? How things are operating today to that, potential future state, right? Like, where are we trying to go? What's our strategic vision? What are some of our strategic goals in this coming quarter, in this coming year? So, the operational audit becomes the tool that enables us to kind of identify and unpack some of those gaps, right? There's a bunch of different operational types of, different types of operational audits, and it's definitely not a one size fits all, but I'll give you a quick breakdown on a couple of different ones that'll probably be pretty helpful for you. So the first one I like to start with is your product or service delivery, right? And this is basically looking at how effective are you when it comes to creating and delivering your specific product or service. So for example, we've got a what we call our operational excellence snapshot available on the website. And this is like a 20-question quiz, self-assessment. And this gives you some thought-provoking questions about what's happening throughout your operations, and gives you a report breaking down some recommended action items and kind of your top 3 opportunities for improvement, right? That's really all that the operational audit is intended to do. It's to identify the potential gaps, and then, give you a bit of a roadmap towards, well, what do we actually do, right? So a couple of the other types of operational audits that can be performed that may be of interest for your particular situation or organization, IT audits, right? Anything from cybersecurity, data integrity or governance, even your software adoption is a good candidate for an IT operational audit. Marketing audits, that would be another one. Compliance audits, if you're in a more regulated industry like aerospace, or even something, I've got one client right now who is going through a ISO certification. So, even a operational compliance audit, right? Are we still in compliance with our specific certification? So those are a couple of the different types of operational audits that are out there. A couple of the key challenges when it comes to, doing an operational audit is really around the kind of accuracy and also the change management aspect, right? Underneath the optional or the operational audit in and of itself is this need or want or interest in change, right? So understanding and ultimately figuring out how we're going to tackle that as a part of this potential operational audit that we're going to do, that's important, right? Starting with the why, talking about what we anticipate is going to be the impact, obviously keeping the lines of communication open and relevant, both across your organization and at different layers of your organization. And again, this becomes complex depending on how large your organization is, how centralized or decentralized your organization is. And then the other factor of kind of the challenge aspect is the scope, right? So limiting the scope of the particular operational audit that you want to perform, and having some idea around, why is this a potential opportunity for us? How are we recognizing and identifying that? And then how do we move forward in terms of, kind of what are those first steps, right? What does that look like? So, I think the kind of why behind an operational audit and even some of the benefits are relatively, are relatively obvious. The whole goal here is to reduce and eliminate risk, increase consistency, increase our ability, to kind of rectify any inefficiencies or ineffectiveness that we have throughout our organization. In terms of how we go about implementing an operational audit, and again, this doesn't matter if you're going to create your own, if you're going to search around and find one to take, but you've got to go through a bit of planning, as I mentioned, to address some of those challenge points. Who's going to be involved? How are they going to be involved? How kind of wide reaching is the scope of the particular operational audit that you're looking for? How are we going to collect data or evidence? What are the tools that we're going to utilize to do that? Is it a questionnaire? Is it a third party that you're going to invite into your organization to perform this operational audit? Are you looking to get a pulse on your operation? Are you looking for a deep dive into your operation? Right? These are all kind of questions that you should be asking yourself when it comes to, researching and, entertaining doing an operational audit for your organization. One of the other areas that often gets overlooked, and this is more along the lines in terms of, once the operational audit has been completed, once you kind of gathered, some ideas in terms of getting you from current state to future state, is, testing what some of these proposed changes and ultimately implemented changes will do. And again, depending on exactly what we're talking about from the operational audit perspective, that conversation is going to be different, right? So some things will allow you to, let's say if it's IT related or data related, some of those changes we might be able to do from a modeling perspective and kind of model what the results are. Some other things that are a bit more hands-on, a bit more related to, specific process flows, let's say, from a, product creation and or delivery standpoint. Some of those might be a bit more challenging to test, but I would encourage you to certainly think through what that is and what that could look like. I've shared this story before, but one of the most important lessons that I've learned when it comes to any type of change, as it relates to process specifically, is our ability to test what we believe to be true. And, without going into the long story of what happened, I experienced a situation that I thought had been resolved through, process improvement, through training efforts. And it was only until we tested our new process or our revised process that we found out that, in fact, we hadn't actually solved the issue. And we were still open to experiencing that exact same problem that we thought we had rectified, right? So the testing, it's something I'm super passionate about. I firmly believe in, because I've seen the results of believing that we've solved a problem and never testing for that. And what that really means is, again, this was hard for me to understand, but what this really means is literally introducing failure into the process, right? To test, to see if what you've outlined as a process stops that from moving on to the next stage, thus eliminating, a significant amount of wasted resource and probably saving the company a ton of money. Right. So definitely something that needs to be considered as you're starting to work through any type of operational audit. You want to be thinking about, how are we going to test for this, right? How are we going to test against what's existing today? And then, kind of lastly, the thing we want to be thinking through is, how do we present and articulate not just what we found, but also some ideas around how we can move forward, right? So again, it's not just doing a proper operational audit is not just about identifying the gaps. It is also about providing some steps forward to close those gaps. And again, could we create the most perfect, strategy and execution to rectify and close those gaps? Sure. But what generally is not just more approachable, but ultimately leads to more sustainable change is, what can we do? What's one thing? What's two things? What's three things that we can do to step towards improving this specific area that's been highlighted, right? Getting yourself into this cycle of improvement. And again, I don't really care what framework you choose to follow when it comes to that cycle of improvement, but thinking through, how do we plan, execute, review, revise, repeat, right? How do we get into the cycle of improvement to move the needle forward when, again, it comes to closing down these specific gaps, right? So as a reminder, this podcast, any of my solo episodes are an extension of our newsletter. If you're not already subscribed, would highly recommend you go and check that out. You can find it on the website. It's totally free to subscribe. We send it out every Saturday morning and share with you at least one actionable tip to help you drive growth for your business. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for listening today. If we brought you any value, please rate, subscribe, and share our podcast. Also, be sure to connect with us on social media by searching @The Crysler Club. Until next week, I'm your host, Dave Crysler.